And now I'm going to show you how we can use Git branches to be able to organize our code. So the first thing is that we can go to GitHub and we can create a new repository. So I'm going to call this pull request demo. And I will make it public, but obviously for your projects, you might want to make them private. So then we can then initialize the repository with a README file and then click Create. And so now we have our new repository. We will now go and clone this repository and pull it onto our computer so that we can start adding our code base to it. And so in this case, I'm going to use Git Kraken, which is a visual tool to be able to do this, but there are many other options, and you can even use the command line if you'd like to. So we want to be able to clone this repository that we just created. So we can click on the GitHub, and now we can search for our repository. And then we just need to pick the folder that we want to clone it into. So in my case, I'm going to use Documents. So now we've cloned the repository. We can now open it visually. And we can see that we have one branch that's our master branch and a single commit. So by clicking the branch tool, we can create a new branch off of master, and we will call this staging. Now we can press the push button, and we can push our staging branch up to GitHub. So finally, now we can create our feature branch. So we will call this first-feature. And so now we're ready to go. So we can open up our code editor. And open up the project that we just cloned. And we'll create some code. And so in this case, I'm just going to make a simple file called firstfeature.txt. And I'm just going to put some text in it. So now I can save this. And I can go back to Git Kraken. I can see that it's detected the changes that I've made. So I can stage all of these changes, and I could put a commit message. So now I've committed this change locally. Now I want to be able to push this branch along with that change up to GitHub. So I push the push button. And so now we can see that our master branch, our staging branch, and our first feature branch are already up on GitHub. So now I want to show you that you can make multiple commits to the same branch. So we're going to make some more changes to this file on the same first feature branch. So now we save that. We can see that it's detected these new changes again. We could first stage all these changes and then commit them. So initially, the changes are just local, but then I could push it. So then it will push all of those changes that I made on my second commit up to GitHub. So now I want to be able to make my first pull request. So I can go to the pull request tab, and I want to do a pull request from my first feature branch onto my staging branch. So I have to make sure that on the right-hand side, first feature is selected, and on the left-hand side, the bases are staging, because I want to be merging from the first feature onto the staging. So I can give it a title and some details about what I did for this particular feature branch, and I could say create a pull request. So now that the pull request has been created, if you have other people working on your team, you'd want to be able to forward this onto them so that they can look at the changes you made and approve them. But then once you're satisfied, you can say merge the pull request. And in this case, we want to do a squash and merge. And so the reason for this is that we want to make sure that all of the changes that we made in our feature branch get squashed down into a single commit that then gets added onto the staging branch. Once we select that, we can say confirm and squash, and we have now merged these changes onto our staging branch. So when we go back to Git Kraken, we can see that we now have a new commit that's on our staging branch. And so initially, it's on the remote only. We can do a pull, and we see that all of those changes get onto our local. And so now, even though we're on the staging branch, all of the changes that we made in that new text file are now here. And so once we're satisfied that it worked, we can delete the feature branch up on GitHub, and then we can also delete it locally because we don't need it anymore. So now we're going to make a second feature branch. We're going to push that up to GitHub, and we're going to make a new text file called secondfeature.txt. So now we can make some changes in this file and save it. We can see that Git Kraken detected that we made these changes, and we can make a commit. So not only can we create a new file and make changes, we can also edit the original file. There are no limitations, as long as it makes sense from a code perspective. So once we make those changes to the original file, we can also make a second commit on our second feature branch. And now we can create a new pull request. So it's the same thing where we're merging from our second feature onto our staging. We can create the pull request. Then we can do a squash and merge. Get any approvals from people on our team that we need. And now this has been merged. And so now we can delete the remote branch safely for the second feature because we don't need it anymore. And when we refresh on our desktop, we'll see that the second feature is now gone from the remote, and we have a new commit on staging. So we can do a pull on staging, and then we can delete our second feature branch that's local because we don't need it anymore. Great. So now we've made commits onto staging using pull requests for our first and second feature. So let's do it one more time. Now we're ready to add our third feature. So I can create a text file called thirdfeature.txt, and I can type in some text here. So now you can see there's some changes. It detected the changes, and I'm going to make a commit. And so I ended up accidentally making a mistake here, and I'm making this commit to the staging branch, which is something that you should never do. So I see that I make this change, and so the way to revert is that I can click on a commit that I want to revert to, and I can just do a hard revert. And so this will actually discard the changes that I made, but it will ensure the integrity of the staging branch. And so now I'm going to show you a different way that we can do this revert. Now we have to unfortunately redo our work because I did a hard reset. So I create a third feature text file again, and I add some text. And so now you can see that I have these changes. And so I want to show you a different way that we can actually preserve our work. So I'm going to kind of on purpose this time, make the commit again to the staging branch. So I'm purposely adding it now to the wrong branch. And so I make this commit. As you can see, it's on the staging branch, which is not what we want. But what we can do instead is we can do a soft reset here, which will keep all the files that we changed, but it will just revert the commit. So now what we can do is create our third feature branch. And so now we can make the changes to that commit. So we've committed it right where it should be. So now we can push this feature branch. And now we can do our pull request. So we want to merge from our third feature onto staging. So I can create that pull request, and I can do a squash and merge a final time. So now I can delete the branch on GitHub, and then I can go back in Git Kraken to my local repository, and I can see that the remote branch for third feature has been deleted, and that staging has a new commit. So great. So now I have a staging branch that has 3 commits on it and a master branch that only has 1. So what I'm going to do now is I'm finally ready to merge from staging onto master. So let's say that we're ready for production now, and we can open up a pull request for our release candidate version 1.0. So let's create this pull request. And so here is a very important distinction. We've been doing squash and merging this whole time, but when you want to merge from one branch onto another, where the branch you're merging from, you want to keep around afterwards. So in this case, I don't want to delete the staging branch. I want to keep it open. I want to make sure that I just do a normal merge and not a squash and merge. And I also want to make sure that I don't delete the staging branch after the pull request has been completed. And so what we'll see here is that we now have a staging branch and a master branch, and that the master branch now has a second commit on it, which is the result of the 3 changes that I made on the staging branch. So what's great about this is that I have 2 branches that are totally independent, and I could be selective about when I'm merging a series of changes from staging down onto master. So I can be working on my staging branch, I could be making updates, and it's only when I'm ready for production that I can merge those changes onto master. And if in the future I accidentally have a change that totally breaks staging, it's okay, because my master only will get the release candidates, so it will only get these releases that are certified and ready to go. And so that's it. I've now taught you the basics of branching in Git. And so the important parts are that you have a master and a staging branch, that whenever you make changes, you create a third feature branch where you can make those changes on the feature branch, and then only when they're ready to go onto staging, you do a squash and merge onto staging. What this also allows for is that you could have multiple features going on at the same time, and you can merge them onto staging just when they're ready to go. So there's no interdependency between features either. So I hope that helped.